Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means New Comic Book Day, although you'd never know it from this channel. New Comic Book Day is when comic fans go to the comic shop, their LCS, their local comic shop, and get whatever intrigues them. Or maybe if they're feeling flushed, they pay down their pull list or whatever. And I used to be in that number for years and years, for decades and decades. I bought monthly comics when there was nothing else, when there was no option. There was no electronic option. There were no trade paperbacks. There were no reprints of any kind, except there were reprints, but they were themselves monthly comic books, like World's Greatest Comics or Marvel Tales or Marvel Triple Action. These were comics that existed to reprint older work, but no square-bound books, no nothing like that. So if there was a great run going on in the Fantastic Four or the Justice League or whatever, I knew where I had to go to get the next installment. The stands weren't cripplingly flooded with books. There were no mega crossover events. There was nothing like that. Instead, if you were a Spider-Man fan, for instance, since he's on my mind, as you'll see, then you had The Amazing Spider-Man. And that was that. If you'd come into comics a little late, then you had Marvel Tales as well. That was the Spider-Man reprint volume so that you could catch up on older issues. But it wasn't for decades until Marvel decided, hey, what if we made two monthly Spider-Man books? What if we introduced a book called Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and just had two monthly Spider-Man books going on at the same time? That was a step down a perilous road. It worked. It worked just fine. It ended up working for everything, so there were multiple Marvel titles of a whole bunch of stuff. I miss the simplicity of the time when you had a writer and an artist, and that team stayed on a book for a long time. They made a great impression. They developed a feel, an atmosphere, and that was it. That was where you went for that comic book. So if you wanted the Avengers, well, first of all, not every superhero in the Marvel Universe was an Avenger. There was a set roster, and it didn't usually change all that much, except when it changed completely. And there weren't any other Avengers comics. It was just that. It was a big deal if the Avengers guest starred in the X-Men or something like that. But it was usually, if you wanted the Avengers, you had to just buy the Avengers every month. And I did that for a long time. I did that, and it was when the market started to change that I also started to change. Once the two major superhero comic book companies, Marvel and DC, realized that their fan base was older and had disposable income, they started making graphic novels. They started collecting runs of comics into square-bound paperback books that could be in bookstores or whatever. That were certainly a lot more durable than individual issues. And as that reprint culture grew, I also embraced it. And maybe partially I was pushed in that direction by the fact that a lot of the monthly comics seemed to get steadily worse, hand in hand with getting steadily more expensive, so that I would pick up a Marvel comic and half of it would be full-page house ads. There would be a far lower page count of original content, and the writing and the art would be kind of bad. And not just bad aesthetically, but also that I would read it and I would think, I would get to page 3 or 4 and I would think, okay, well, this writer doesn't seem to... I remember the seismic feeling of reading an issue of X-Men or Doctor Strange or whatever, and having a sneaking feeling creep up on me until finally it just announced itself in words in my mind, where I suddenly realized that I was reading a comic book written by someone who was not a comic book fan, who did not know the character's background as well as I did. For some reason, that seemed very strange. It seemed to me before then that comics were written by people who were diehard comic fanatics and wouldn't make a simple continuity error. They might change continuity, but they wouldn't be simply wrong about something. Maybe that was hand in hand with it, but I think a lot of it wasn't judgmental. It was just practical. And there were also long stretches of time where I just walked away from comics altogether if I was traveling or something like that. So collected volumes, hardcovers, omnibuses, trade paperbacks have been of great interest to me in the last decade of comic buying, not just because nothing, usually very little, being put out by the two major superhero companies actually appeals to me enough to get it as an issue, but also because I know that those issues will be collected. Marvel and DC now collect everything. So I, like a lot of other fans, do what's known as trade waiting, or I will get an artist and a writer on a particular book, whatever it is, and I will like their approach. Maybe I'll buy the first issue that they team up on, But I won't get any of the others because I know that if I like it, I'm going to want the book. And I'm not going to want to pay twice for the same material. So I faced that dilemma 2 comic book weekends, 2 comic book Wednesdays in a row. 2 weeks in a row, there were big $125 Spider-Man hardcover collections. One collected the great run on Spider-Man written by J. Michael Straczynski and drawn by the great John Romita Jr. Fantastic run, lots of interesting character development, fantastic scenes, and just top form artwork. Of course, John Romita Jr. is the son of John Romita Sr., who became famous all over the world. His work became famous all over the world. He drew everything, but he became synonymous with Spider-Man. John Romita Sr. did, and then decades later, John Romita Jr., who had worked his way up through all kinds of Marvel comics, started drawing Spider-Man. He had one run after another on the book, separated over time by other artists, and the run that he has with J. Michael Straczynski is incredibly good. As signature and an interpretation visually of the character, I would argue, as that of his father, as heretical as that would seem, because I loved John Romita Sr.'s Spider-Man. I wasn't all that wild about Spider-Man, actually. The character, the supporting cast, any of the villains, I wasn't all that wild about him, but every time Spider-Man from Marvel Comics kept drawing me in, because even though I'm not particularly wild about Spider-Man, it doesn't do it for me as a fictional character. Consistently, there were fantastic writers and especially fantastic artists. I can hardly remember a stretch on Spider-Man that didn't have that. So, I buy comics mostly for art. That's mostly why I get them. But certainly when I was buying individual issues, that's what I did. And that I didn't get that $125 J. Michael Straczynski hardcover because I felt like a fool paying that much money for something that is so egregiously overpriced to start with, when there are remainder comic book sites online that are selling it already for $50, $60. And that'll only go down with time. And it's not like I don't have these issues. It's not like I don't know what's in them. So I didn't do it. I know that collectors like to rush out and get these things right on day one, but I decided against it. I had it in my hand, and I decided against it. And there was nothing else. There were no individual issues that week that I wanted, so I didn't get anything at the comic shop. I went to the comic shop, said hi to the guy that was there, but I walked out empty-handed. And the following week, there was another $125 Spider-Man hardcover, this time collecting Spider-Man from part of the ongoing, omnibus collection of Spider-Man, collecting a whole bunch of great issues that, once again, I wasn't all that interested in the issues, but the artwork was by Gil Kane, and then when Gil Kane left the book, an artist named Ross Andrew took over, and he was radically different from Gil Kane, as everybody is. Gil Kane is one of a kind, but Ross Andrew's artwork ended up being really, really good in a completely different way. Very architectural, very detailed, very realistic in an odd kind of way. And I liked the writing, even though it irritated me at times, because this was an era in which Spider-Man was a web-slinging, wisecracking guy, and precious little else. It's like the writers, Jerry Conway especially, forgot that Spider-Man is super powered. It's not just that he spins webs; it's that he's super powered. So that you get, for instance, it was this whole great run of issues. You have like this. Look at that. Look at that, fantastic. That is a John Romita Sr. cover, and look at that. That is just wonderful. And the interior artwork is by Ross Andrew, and he has a very spatially oriented. Look at that. That is Spider-Man over Manhattan. The Vulture has just simply dropped him, picked him up way into the sky, and dropped him. And let me see if I can get you an example of. Ross Andrew was really good at faces and at Peter Parker's civilian life. Let me see if I can get you well, no, not really. Not in this issue. I mean, there are plenty of issues where we get all sorts of buildings and architecture done really well. Although he has a very interesting panel by panel action style as well. But the thing that bothered me about the writing in this period is that Spider-Man would straight up punch an ordinary human, and the fight would continue. He would straight up punch the Vulture, for instance, or Dr. Octopus, who was an ordinary man with marauding mechanical arms. He would straight up punch these people, and it wouldn't affect them in any way. It was like them being punched by a brawler in their local bar instead of someone who can lift, 40 tons over his head. And that bugged me that was this Spider-Man, and that's nowhere seen more clearly than in probably the most famous issue in that second collection, that second Spider-Man anthology, was this one, the introduction of the Punisher to the Marvel Universe, a Gil Kane cover that's just terrific and has become iconic. And in this issue is drawn by Ross Andru, and in this issue, here we go. That is Spider-Man plain up clocking the Punisher across the face. That should not only knock him unconscious, but tear his head off his shoulders. And it doesn't. The Punisher is wide awake and still fighting right after that happens. And that is very annoying. And also, this is the Punisher who he has decided, let's see, you're all alike, using whatever means to get control of the public, drugs, gambling, loan sharking operations, some of it legitimate, but all of it evil. Sometimes I wonder if that evil's rubbed off on me, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is the job. Like I said, I don't enjoy it. And he's saying all that while Spider-Man is pinioned by titanium wire. Some sort of titanium alloy. The Punisher, for some inconceivable reason, has him directly in his sights, and instead of shooting him, it wraps him up in titanium wire, and then talks about how you're all evil, you all need to be eradicated, but he's not shooting him while he does that. And that gives Spider-Man time to break free, punches the Punisher into a brick chimney that still hasn't taken the Punisher out of the fight. He is still fighting a panel later, when he should long since have been unconscious. And I remember reading this when it came out. When this was in the 70s? Yes, when was this? 1973. I remember when this came out, and I was reading this, and I was thinking, okay, well, if this Punisher guy really is the new era of vigilantes in Marvel Comics, the people who just want the bad guys done and not, sent off to Arkham Asylum or whatever, then why did he pass up a couple of good opportunities to shoot Spider-Man? And B, why is the Punisher able to take just a punch from Spider-Man straight to the face without it meaning anything, without it stopping him at all? And also C, and I should point this out, I'm fighting all these battles 50 years later, but if you were to twine up Spider-Man in a titanium alloy wire, it would hold him. If he tried to break free of it, the most he would do is cut his own limbs off. Writers seem not to get that. A really strong harbor rope would hold Spider-Man. The stress test for these things is well in excess of his strength level. But you get that. But on the other hand, you get these great little moments like Peter Parker sewing his own costume. And look, a lot of you young people won't know what that is. That's his cell phone. I have these things and these issues, and I have all of them that are going to be in that $125 anthology. So I just didn't bother. I had that thing again in my hand, and I just didn't bother. And so I thought I would make a comeback today at the comic shop. And I went, and there was a Marvel Visionaries trade paperback of John Romita Sr., the very person that I'm talking about, the person who did this cover. Of his artwork at Marvel, extending from, the 1940s, when he was doing the Submariner and the Human Torch and Captain America, to the romance and Western titles that floated the company back before superheroes took off again, to Daredevil and Spider-Man and Captain America, and to later work. And it's the Visionaries volume. It's going to be reprints here and there, depending on some editor saying, well, here's signature, or this is an iconic thing, or whatever. And I was going to get it. I'd planned on buying it. And when I saw it, I thought, I always buy these Visionary volumes, and I only look through them once. And inevitably, I don't look through them again, because you're not getting the whole arc of any story. Yes, I read comics for the artwork, but this particular format is like gibberish. So I passed. I passed on it. And there was another collection today. There's another collected volume today of the Batman artwork of an artist named Michael Golden, who is fantastic. He's still working today, and he's great. He's a slow, meticulous worker. He works in heavy shadows, heavy color, lots of atmospherics in his artwork. And as a result, that makes him the perfect artist for a certain kind of comic book character. In Marvel, one of those characters would be Doctor Strange, and Michael Golden did draw Doctor Strange on and off once in a while. A couple of his Doctor Strange issues are standalone single-issue classics, where if somebody comes up with prints an omnibus of the best of Doctor Strange, those issues will certainly be there. Michael Golden also won my heart by doing the briefly Marvel Comics won the franchise to a toy line called the Micronauts. And believe it or not, they made a good comic out of it. Probably the Micronauts has been collected. It was really good. You wouldn't have thought so. You would have looked at it and thought, okay, this can't be anything at all. This is just them doing a comic book version of a toy for marketing reasons. But they got Michael Golden to draw it. And the writing was great too. And I loved those issues. If they exist as a trade paperback, you'll have to let me know, because I would buy it. Absolutely. But in DC Comics, not franchise and not Marvel, but in DC Comics, the character that he is just born to draw is Batman. And he has drawn Batman on and off. He's kind of slow to do a regular monthly book unless his heart is really in it, or unless he has a really great support structure. I don't think he could really do Batman for very long as a series regular artist. Not without being less. And he's one of those artists that doesn't really want to be less. So his Batman covers have all been iconic, and his Batman issues have likewise been iconic, so much so that I have kept a lot of them over the years while they just fall apart and while I continue to reread them. And I saw that issue and I thought, well, okay, you've kept those issues, some of those issues of Batman drawn by Michael Golden, but how many times have you looked at them in the last 30 years? Do you really want this volume? That's the question that I asked. Do you really want this volume? It was things like this. These things from 50 years ago. These Batman family issues. Where in every issue you would get backup features starring the Huntress or Man-Bat or Robin or Batgirl. But the front feature would be Batman. And in these issues, the front feature was drawn by Michael Golden. And that's why I kept these issues. Because, let me see if I can get you... Yeah, see, we have... See the... this, I don't know if you can make it out. The kind of texture involved there. We had never seen that before. Yeah, look at the vision there. The vision that takes. That is not your normal monthly comic book artwork. And that made these issues just great. I mean, look at the pursuers are in black, but there is the bat silhouette, and the water is done so perfectly. That's all throughout there. It's just an ordinary small adventure, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I kept it, even though the backup features are execrable. And the same thing with this one. This one has a vaguely supernatural element to it. And not only that, but a cover by Mike Kaluta, who is famous for his work on The Shadow and was a quintessential Shadow artist. And this is the same thing. This has backup features by Man-Bat and Huntress and Robin and Batgirl. But the main feature is about Batman, who's up in the hill country, dealing with the legend of a 100-year-old bat. that in a great moment, let me get you the panel sequence here. In a great moment, a 100-year-old lady who lives up in the mountains remembers when she was a child and saw the thing. And it has been around ever since, avenging evil on its own terms. And Batman is up there and doesn't believe in the story until he's convinced that it's real. And I have these issues. I have a lot of these Michael Golden appearances on Batman, but I passed on that issue too. I talked myself out of all of these because I already have them, or maybe because I don't have any real indication that I would ever read them. I talked myself out of them. There will be hardcover and paperback collections that I won't talk myself out of. For instance, I would buy either one of those $125 Spider-Man volumes if they were $50. I would buy both of them if they were. And they will be. I will see them eventually as $50. And also, there are a couple of things coming down the pike that I will buy instantly, even at full price, if my local comic shop has them. But I didn't this time around. None of them really fit the bill, and I felt bad going in again and not getting anything. So I did get some things. I got 2 single issues and a hardcover that was a remainder. It was on sale. One of the single issues that I got it's a mess. It's an ongoing miniseries at DC Comics that is a mess. It has been bitterly, brutally delayed. It's delayed all sorts of other ancillary projects. It's the Doomsday Clock, and it springs from the disastrous decision on the piratical, horrible decision on the part of DC Comics to try and incorporate the world of Alan Moore's The Watchmen into the DC continuity. It's DC saying, yes, Alan Moore conceived and wrote The Watchmen, one of the greatest superhero graphic novel stories of all time, but properties belong to us, so we get to use them any way we want. It's not like you, Alan Moore, get to tell us no. And so they have done this idea where they're going to merge the characters from The Watchmen with the characters from DC Comics, even though The Watchmen is explicitly built on that not being the case. It's explicitly built on the opposite of that being true. So you have the classic All-Star Comics cover of the Justice Society of America, only who's that in the front? That's Dr. Manhattan. In the front, of course, was not on the original 1930s cover or whatever. And I have not been following this series because it's Jeff Johns at his most grandiose and incomprehensible, telling the story in bite-sized little fragments and taking his sweet time doing it. He should have been fired 3 times over for how late and how garbled this thing is. And the reason that I got this issue is because in standard comic book fan fashion, I briefly flipped through it right there on the stands and saw a couple of things that made me get it. Because one of the reasons for this whole series has been that the main character of The Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan, who is this master of the quantum realm, he's a reconstituted human being who has apparently limitless powers. I don't believe that. I don't think he does. I think the powers that DC Comics are giving him for the Doomsday Clock series are vastly in excess of what they were ever shown to be in Watchmen. But it doesn't matter because DC Comics wanted a MacGuffin. And the reason they did is because 5 or 6 years ago they did a company-wide reboot called the New 52, where they stopped all of their ongoing comics, believed for some unbelievable reason, some stupid reason, that Heritage was bad, and so we're going to dump it all. We have 80 years of Heritage. We're going to dump all of that. We're going to start everything over with a clean slate. When that is not true, your 80 years of heritage as a superhero comic book company is only a bad idea if you get writers who don't know how to handle it. And you're not going to fix that problem by wiping the slate because all of that heritage has fans. The key is to use it, not to get rid of it. But DC Comics got rid of it. They wiped the slate clean. And when they relaunched all of their superhero comics, suddenly the continuity was very different. And 2 of the differences really hit home for me. One of them was that there was no Justice Society of America. There were no superheroes during World War II. No original superhero team. No nothing like that. Just because we say so. Because we're DC Comics and we say so. And the other upshot of the New 52 was that since Superman put on his costume and started fighting crime as an adult, there was no Superboy. And because there was no Superboy, the Legion of Superheroes was radically different. And because the Legion of Superheroes is a superhero team of teenagers 1,000 years from now who take their inspiration from Superboy and then go back in time and actually pluck their inspiration out of Smallville and bring him forward to the future so that they can share adventures with him. And when the New 52 started, both of those things were gone. And a whole bunch of other stuff was gone as well, including the old characterization of Superman. He now had weird metallic armor type costume, and he wore a popped Nehru collar, and he floated above the ground when he talked to people, and he seemed disassociated from his human heritage. His girlfriend the whole time during the New 52 was Wonder Woman, and he didn't really think about Lois Lane at all, the human anchor of his existence on Earth. I hated it. I went through it. Loyal as I am to DC Comics, I went through it, but I hated all of it, and I had a feeling the whole time that this is just a mistake. Sooner or later, you're going to have to redo all of this. Fans will want all of these things back, and they did. They did. And somewhere in the boardrooms of DC Comics, somebody hit on Dr. Manhattan and thought, well, here's a character who technically belongs to us, and he's all-powerful. So he can be our MacGuffin for a series called Doomsday Clock, and he, through just mucking around with reality, can get us back properties that we don't have. We can relaunch them. We can make them part of this series and then go from there. That's a very, very bad idea. That's a very bad idea. If you rejigger your continuity on the basis of a MacGuffin, then it's dependent on that MacGuffin, which means that 5 years down the line, some cokehead writer is going to think, well, what if I take that MacGuffin out of mothballs and screw everything up again? That will happen, I guarantee. What you need to do is simply remake the reality and then make a company rule. Post it on every cubicle saying, adventures, no reality altering, just adventures. If you come to my editorial office and you tell me, I know I have that placard up above my computer that says no reality altering, just adventures. I know I have that placard, but I'm fresh out of ideas and I really do want to alter reality just because I need a paycheck and I'm kind of bored. If you have that placard at your cubicle, then your editor can say, all right, very good. Well, you don't realize it, but you have just resigned. So clear out your cubicle and I have a line of 30,000 people behind you who can come up with adventures. You're not going to alter reality anymore. No, there is a moratorium. There is nothing more. There are no more retcons, no more revisions, no more revampings of continuity. And if you say that you can't produce a monthly adventure comic of Green Lantern or The Flash or Hawkman without doing that, then we don't want you. I would like it very much if DC Comics would do that, very much. But in the meantime, we have this. And what Doomsday Clock, when it finally finishes, if it ever finally finishes, is going to do is reintroduce the Justice Society of America. There they are. There they are. These characters who have been in complete abeyance for the better part of a decade. And there they are. Wonderful. Wonderful. So if we get a comic book, an ongoing comic book that is their World War II adventures, I would be very happy. And in addition to that, another visual, the visual that I happened to catch at the local comic shop, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. Now, granted, there is a little bit of retconning going on, even in what is supposed to be an original memory. This is supposed to be Dr. Manhattan looking at the original timeline of Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. But at his initiation ritual, when he's being talked to by the 3 founding members of the Legion, he's told, as the Legion of Superheroes, each one of us has come to Earth from our respective worlds to carry on your mission to combat xenophobia of all kinds. That, of course, is not Superboy's mission or Superman's mission. That is total 21st century speak. So it might be that none of this is real, but I got the issue because I was looking at it and realized that how much I missed seeing these things in glorious full-color DC Comics artwork. How much I missed seeing them. There you see those. I don't think there are any Legion fans watching. But if you look carefully, you'll see interlac. You've got yes or no, but you also have interlac there. So I got this just to see. I think this is issue number 10 of 12. This started like 3 years ago, so God only knows when number 12 will happen and what will come from there. I don't think I'll get any others. This was just a weakness on my part, just a momentary weakness. The next thing, though, was not a weakness. This is an ongoing thing that I love. I loved the first issue, and this is issue number 2. This is Star Trek Year 5, issue number 2. A story that has the crew of the original Enterprise in their first 5-year mission, facing off against the Tholians from the great episode The Tholian Web. And it turns out that this is the second issue of a 2-issue story arc to start the thing off. It ended kind of abruptly, but I thought it was wonderful. And it was wonderful even though it was mostly static. There's some great space drawing. Just fantastic space artwork, which you really need in a Star Trek comic book, and you don't often get. You really surprisingly get it far more seldom than you would think. I have read every Star Trek comic, and most of them are but there's another terrific scene where Captain Kirk, the crew has brought on a young Tholian that was wounded, and they're trying to help the thing. They don't have any idea how to communicate with it. They don't have any idea about its physiology. But Kirk has an intuition that this is not a victim. That this little Tholian is a victim of his own people, and that if they turn him over as his people demand, he'll be executed. It'll be executed. He has an intuition that is true. He has no basis in logic. Spock and McCoy both tell him, "Don't do this. Hand over the prisoner to the Tholians. Let's not provoke an interstellar war." But Kirk doesn't want to do that. He's convinced otherwise. And he goes to sickbay where the creature is recovering and has a long talk with the creature. in which he just narrates an episode from his own life, which original Star Trek fans will know about, Tarsus 4, Kodos the Executioner, when young Jim Kirk was there as a boy and narrowly survived genocidal expedients on the part of a planetary governor. We learn all about it in the episode called The Conscience of the King. And here we have Kirk narrating that story. And there's a wonderful moment where he reaches out to the Tholian, to the little Tholian in sickbay, wanting to make contact, and it turns its head. And they do make contact. Simple as that. And that moment is wonderful because that moment captures Jim Kirk, who has neither the scientific disposition of Mr. Spock nor the inherent conservatism of Dr. McCoy. He is a maverick who understands things even outside of his own ken. I thought it was wonderful. It ended a little abruptly for me, but I thought it was terrific. And the hardcover that I mentioned was a last minute thing. This had been, I think, $75. I think these things are also grotesquely overpriced. No, this was $40 when it originally came out. It's $20 on sale. One of many remainders. I didn't really give them that much of a look because I was running late. I will look next time for other things that I might want. But this is, DC Comics did a whole bunch of these volumes. This one is a celebration of 75 years of Aquaman in a hardcover, which just takes us through all of his different periods from his initial appearance all the way to the present day. So you get fairly throwaway Aquaman adventures from, 80 years or 70 years ago, where he was basically just this guy who commanded ocean wildlife and could swim really fast, live underwater, but he didn't have any real superpowers other than that. He was sort of Batman of the sea. And even in the 1960s, when this character had great artwork by Jim Aparo, the great Jim Aparo did a lot of his first work for DC Comics, mainstream superheroes, with Aquaman, and then not Jim Aparo, not Jim Aparo. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Who is it? Ivan Rice? No, he's the latest one. Jim Aparo. Nick Cardy. That's right, Nick Cardy, who is he was. Let me get you a piece of his artwork. He's fantastic, and you're going to get. There's Aquaman and Aqualad using fish as weapons. Nick Cardy did Aquaman for a long time, and his artwork is tremendously good. He was also really good on the Teen Titans at about the same time. And then Jim Aparo, who became the signature artist for Batman, did a lot of his work on Aquaman as well, and he was fantastic. And that guy Ivan Rice, the man that I named, is one of the later artists for Aquaman, and also is fantastic. Really has a flair for the character. Here's a case where Aquaman is being shot at, and that would have been fatal to the original Aquaman. He would simply have died. He would have been shot and died. This Aquaman, not only do the bullets bounce off his trident and his scale armor, but they pretty much bounce off him as well. A bullet to his head leaves only a little scar. So we know already that he's not only extra dense, but super strong as well. And that's great. You can see that progressing through this volume. That really needed to happen. Someone who lives in Atlantis, miles and miles below the earth, below the surface of the ocean, and who can swim really fast, is going to be superpowered. So Aquaman has always needed a quiet upgrade in his superpowers. He has always needed that. And he hasn't had it until comparatively recently. Now he is a heavy hitter. Now he is someone, trident in hand, super strength, invulnerable, who belongs on the Justice League. Whereas for years and years, he was one of its weakest links. That's inconceivable now. I got this thing mainly because it was $20. I would buy everything at the comic shop if it were $20. But also because it made me remember that Aquaman really has benefited from a lot of great artists over time. And this gives me a sort of a sample of all of them. And also a couple of eras that I'm not familiar with. So there you go. That was my Comic Book Wednesday. It was a little bit all over the map. I went in with a long list of things that I wanted. The one thing I knew I wanted was the Star Trek issue, and it did not disappoint. But the John Romita Sr. Visionaries volume, the Michael Golden Batman volume, there was a collected volume of Spider-Man versus Mysterio. as a foreshadowing of the new movie in which Mysterio is a main character. I didn't get any of these things. I didn't get them. They were there, and I just didn't get them. So we'll hope for better next week, or not better. I'm very happy with these buys, except for this thing. This was ridiculous. Imagine pulling a $5 comic off the shelf and buying it because of an image of the Legion of Superheroes. What's wrong with me? Especially since this summer is going to give me some Legion collections, some Legion hardcovers that I'll want legitimately. But I'm fairly happy with these. There wasn't much money, and next week I will try to make a plan and stick to it. So we will reconvene then. Thank you, Book 2.